Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into the fascinating and honestly deeply polarizing world of the documentary Fantastic Fungi and the hidden mycelial networks beneath our feet. We're going to look at the massive praise this film received, the equally massive scientific backlash it generated, and what these incredibly strange organisms can actually teach humanity. So, to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this project, we actually have to start with a number 15. As in 15 years. That is the staggering amount of time director Louis Schwartzberg dedicated to capturing the time-lapse footage for this film. Let's look at Section 1, 15 years in the making. Picture this. Schwartzberg is working away in his home studio because he had to meticulously control all the lighting and environmental variables, right? And he's capturing just 96 frames every 24 hours. If you do the math on that, it translates to a mere 4 seconds of usable film per day. 4 seconds. It requires an almost unbelievable level of stamina to create a feature-length project at that kind of snail's pace. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the director's deep dedication. It wasn't just, basic biology to him. It became an exercise in extreme empathy and patience. He actually said he realized he turned it into a spiritual practice. He literally had to put his mind into the mindset and intention of the flower or the fungi days in advance. That is turning a standard cinematic technique into something pretty profound. But the heart of the film's narrative relies on one very prominent and, frankly, very controversial figure. Section 2. Meet the fungi evangelist. We are talking about Paul Stamets, who has an incredibly unorthodox background. Over the decades, he transformed from a logger with a bachelor's degree into a largely self-taught fungi entrepreneur. He's even become this massive pop culture icon, directly inspiring a character on Star Trek Discovery. No way, right? He is an undeniably charismatic guide for the documentary, but, and here's the catch, his lack of formal advanced academic training is a major point of friction for some people. So the crucial point here is that Stamets makes some massive world-altering claims in the film. He basically positions mushrooms as a potential panacea for our greatest ailments. He credits magic mushrooms with curing his own severe childhood stutter. He claims turkey tail mushrooms cured his mother's stage 4 breast cancer. And he even champions the stoned ape theory. That's the wild idea that psychedelics actually sparked early human cognitive evolution. Which brings us to a really massive dichotomy. Section 3, the critical divide. The contrast here is incredibly stark. Mainstream critics and everyday audiences absolutely loved the film's hopeful message and those breathtaking visuals. It actually earned a perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, with reviewers calling it an eye-opening, soul-cleansing triumph. But then you look at actual mycologists and biology enthusiasts, totally different story. They felt entirely alienated, dismissing the science in the film as broccology and heavily criticizing it for pushing pseudoscience over basic biology. Let's dig into exactly what that pushback looks like. Section 4, the pseudoscience debate. So critics argue the film acts way more like an 80-minute commercial for Stamets' supplement business Fungi Perfecti than a true documentary. They feel it just ignores vast varieties of fungi, spore prints, and actual identification, prioritizing psychedelic sensationalism over genuine biological education. They even point out some glaring visual errors, like the film frequently uses slime molds to represent mycelium, which, biologically speaking, is completely inaccurate. For science-curious viewers, this was super frustrating. As one Reddit user put it, it started off very strong, but took an unfortunate turn down the pseudoscience path. They felt the breathtaking visual achievements we talked about earlier were ultimately hijacked by unproven claims, creating a dangerous narrative that does absolutely nothing to dispel misconceptions about mushrooms. It's a really fascinating look at how a piece of media can be an absolute visual masterpiece, yet totally fail the test of scientific rigor. Okay, moving beyond the squabbles of film critiques, let's look at the profound ecological realities the source material raises. Section 5, the fungal mind. To really grasp the true scale of fungi, consider a single ancient organism living in Oregon right now. This Armillaria ostoyae, commonly known as the honey fungus, spans 8.9 square kilometers. Think about that. At 2,200 years old, it completely dwarfs any animal on the planet. It kind of changes our fundamental perspective on what a living organism can even be, right? And these massive organisms form what scientists call the Wood Wide Web. It acts as the actual neurological network of nature. It's literally an underground forest internet created by fungal hyphae that shares nutrients, sends distress signals, and interconnects entire ecosystems in this incredible web of distributed collective intelligence and symbiosis. As mycologist Merlin Sheldrake points out, fungi possess a type of cellular consciousness and memory, but they do it entirely without a centralized brain. Because this mycelial coordination takes place everywhere at once and nowhere in particular, they are incredibly resilient and potentially even immortal. This decentralized intelligence leads us to a pretty radical philosophical concept about the future of our own species. Section 6. Entering the Symbiocene. According to the research, we have to completely rethink ourselves. We are not just individual humans, we are holobionts. What does that mean? Well, it means we're composite organisms living in intricate symbiosis with countless others, entirely dependent on the biological networks around and inside us. The whole idea of the autonomous, isolated human is essentially a biological myth. Because of this, philosopher Glenn Albrecht suggests we must enter what he calls the Symbiocene. This is a proposed era in Earth's history where human society stops dominating nature and starts symbiotically reintegrating into it, basically mimicking the mutual life-reproducing networks of fungi. It's a massive shift from the human-centric Anthropocene to an era of deep planetary symbiosis. If you take anything away from this explainer, let it be this. Mycelium survives through communal support and positive sum outcomes, not domination. It is fractally egalitarian, meaning it possesses no upper or lower command hierarchies. This is a direct challenge to our human systems of hierarchy and extraction. The fungi are showing us a highly successful, completely different way to survive. Ultimately, whether you view the film Fantastic Fungi as an absolute cinematic masterpiece or just a pseudoscience infomercial, the source material leaves us with a vital, world-altering question. Can humanity learn to dissolve its ego and operate like a decentralized, mutually beneficial mycelial network before it's too late? I'm going to leave you to think on that. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer.